everyone, this is DMK with you, with Alex, John, Tony, and the greatest of the great, the man himself, Mark Rein-Hagen, the creator of Vampire the Masquerade, the man who changed the TTRPG for me, in particular, forever, but for many people I know as well. Mark agreed to have a conversation with us about his new project, about probably some other projects, and we will have a piece of his wisdom for people who want to expand their experience in storytelling, in GMing. So, hello, Mark. How have you been doing?
Great. Thanks for having me on.
All right, so let's jump into our list of huge list of questions. So I hope we will not bore you to death with that. So we will try to keep it short. All right. So as I mentioned, you changed the life, right? And in sense that, well, I began my TTRPG life with D&D, as many other people. Then I discovered Vampire the Masquerade, which changed my role-playing experience. You can tell us some, a few words about FangKnight.
FangKnight. So the events of the game happen in the world of Lost Lorn. Am I
Yes.
pronouncing that correctly? Can you
Yes.
explain it for newbies who maybe haven't played any vampire games, don't know like what's the premise of the world, how do mortals and vampires interact, what is the balance of power, is there a church or something like that, what are the vampire faction, there is a severe treaty, what does it do?
Yeah. Lost Lorn is basically kind of a purgatory for Earth. So this is where people go when they
Pretty grimdark.
And it's very grimdark. And but there's still a little bit of hope, because I don't think you can have grimdark without giving people a little hope. Otherwise, there's no way to juxtapose, right? So you need to have that sliver of hope at the same time you want it very dark. And so it's basically this dark world. And I don't like fantasy worlds that don't explain why they have all this Earth stuff. Like, why do you have a Japanese culture if there's no Japan? So that's why we have it, so that people have been coming over in waves from Earth for thousands of years. And the people who've been here the longest are called metalborn, because they have a glint of metal to their skin. And so the prejudice in this world is against people who have a metal on their skin and are metalborn. They're the lowly ones. And this lets us get away with having stories about prejudice without having it be so close to the real world, where we make black people the lowest, right? We don't want that. That would be too painful for some people, right? So we invented this whole metalborn thing. So anyway, vampires basically guard the gates of hell for the world. There's no masquerade, because vampires are allowed to exist as long as they build these fireholds. And whenever a new maw is discovered, a new hellhole, they try to close it. If they can't close it, the vampires come and they build a castle, an inside-out castle around it called a firehold. And then these become places of knowledge. They have a library there. The noble families are all required to each send one child. It's called a favorite, with really a hostage. And the hostage is raised in the firehold and is taught the ways of the FangKnights. And then that keeps the peace, right? Because their families won't attack as long as you have the hostages. But also that means the noble families have children in them, members, who understand the job of vampires and support it. There's an alliance between the Fangs and the crown, the royal families. And so the one people you cannot turn into vampires are royal families. It's not allowed. And so the whole thing, though, is that this big secret is that, I shouldn't be telling you this, but I'll go ahead, is that the ancient vampires are called venerate, and they live beneath the earth. And for them to get more powerful, they have to drink the blood of younger vampires. So basically, to get higher powers for yourself, you have to go down there and share your blood with the venerate. But this gives them powers over you. So if you want to go up in rank as a Fang Lord, you need to share blood with the venerate. And for you to go up in rank as a Fang Lord yourself, you have to kill a Fang and drink their blood. So if a younger vampire Fang is not so good at their job, then they'll be secretly hunted down and killed and drank for their blood, so that the older vampire can go up. So, the younger vampires don't know this. Like, they just think that they're being trained and they're going up the rank, but really, there is a time when they may be hunted for their own blood, just the same way vampires hunt mortals for their blood.
There are a lot of interesting concepts. So the Firehold is the fortress that basically your characters have from level 1, right? From rank 1.
Yep.
And they have like this separate character sheet that they manage.
Yep.
What role does it play? Is it like place for meetings only? Is it like...
Yeah, no. It has. You can either start it out as a brand new Firehold, where you are the council and you must elect one of your own to be the regnant, the prince of the Firehold, or you could play in a very ancient, old, and corrupted Firehold that's haunted, that's been around for 1,000 years and is declining, or something in the middle. A Firehold. But the thing is, if you play a Firehold at the height of its powers, you get all the resources, but you're nobody inside of it. You're just nobodies, right? So if you play one of either the really old one or the really young one, you're much more important, but you have many, many more problems. So, but Fireholds can be vast, like little cities. Some Fireholds, like the one in the computer game, is a mile across. It's like
that's
it's quite large. and every faction has their own tower and their own quarters and their own workshops and their own guards, and it's many little castles inside another castle in a way. So it gets very complicated. They're very well. The older fireholds tend to be very well fortified, and they have to be fortified. They have an inner. It's called a scorch yard. So in the middle, they have a scorch yard where the hellhole is, and that's the most heavily fortified. So it's a donut castle. So the inside is where the maw is, and then they have a scorch yard there, and so that's where they defend against invaders.
That's a very interesting concept. I think many players will love it.
Yes, I think they will, and it's cool because you can develop it as a character, and even if your campaign ends, then you could still have a new campaign in the same Firehold with new characters, and your old characters are still there as Fang Lords.
It's almost like roguelite computer game.
Yeah, and your new characters could be their spawn if you wanted to. Like you could be the spawn of the old characters. And so in Council, you can play your old characters, and then on Adventures, your younger ones. Or you can play all the way through to the very end. But that would take you, I think, maybe 40 game sessions to go all the way from FangKnight ranks 1 through 7, Fang Lord ranks 1 through 7. It would take a long time. But, some people want to do that. I do.
Of course.
Yeah, obviously.
If I fall in love with the character, I want to play that character,
Agree. You had to create a character concept. It's not just you put numbers and you min-max or you optimize the build. You need to have a concept which works, which makes sense, right? And in VTM you chose from a list, or you can invent it yourself. And talking about FangKnight, right? So your upcoming project, I did not see that in there. Well, can you tell us, why was not that included?
Yeah, I believe character creation is like the core of any role-playing game, and that character creation should be a process, be beautiful and evocative, and it basically is what introduces you to the game and the world, so it's the most important thing. And of course, players need to be able to create something that they truly love. It's an artistic process, right? And so a lot of games, I think, forget that, this is a work of art you're creating. Your character is very personal to you. It is your work of art. And so you're basically creating a tool for artists, right? So character creation I by far spend more time on that than anything else. At the same time, modern character creation in most games has become an entire game session process. It takes you the entire game session. So I basically stopped doing that. And so what I did is I basically made it so that as you develop your character over the ranks, which are like the levels, you have ranks as a FangKnight, just like real knights have ranks, right? At each rank, different parts of the character creation come in. So for instance, vampires, when they first begin in this world, don't remember their past. They forget everything so they can start anew, but then gradually over time, they remember their past and their connections to their past. So your background, you remember that later, so that's added in later on. Your sub-factions are chosen later on. It's all these little details are done later on, and that elongates the character creation process. It means that the basic character can be created in 5 minutes. So, and still be something unique. And there's 3 main parts to it. There's your bloodline, which is kind of like a character concept, right? Because there's 7 different bloodlines, like clans. Then there's 7 covens, which are like your jobs. Like, what do you do in the Firehold? Or what is your main purpose? And then there's your origin, which is kind of like, how do you speak? What are you used to? Are you a noble, or were you born in the abysmic depths below? Never have seen the sun before. Or vile-born, or you're outlaw, or you're low-born, or whatever it is. And so between these 3 things, you do get a very strong concept instantly. And it's a very quick choice. And that's the first 3 steps of creating a character. And I guarantee if you do it, you will have a strong idea for the character. And the reason I did it that way is to make it much faster and simpler. I always try to make the game, I try to imagine people who have never gamed before, how they would approach it, right? And so you want to make it simple enough for anyone to be able to figure out, but still have that artistic process there, that you're creating a unique character that belongs only to you.
So you remove like extra step from this process to make it more appealing to newcomers, right?
Yeah, I mean, people always say, well, there's no one new will come, and I always go, well, people told me that when I created Vampire, and I brought in, hundreds of thousands of women into gaming, if not millions, and I'm very proud of that, and I proved them wrong, and women at that point, I think a lot of newcomers at that point would look at a D&D character sheet, which back in the 90s was even more complicated than now. And they were like, no, I don't want to deal with this. It's too much. And I think if you make something more friendly, not only do women come in, but people who are math phobic, right? That's one reason why I use dots and I use diamonds now in FangKnight, is that if you give people, many people are so math-phobic, if you show them a page full of numbers, their brain turns off. It turns off.
Right.
You know, and that's not me. I love numbers. I love math, you know, but I always try to understand other people's perspective. Because, of course, that's what role-playing is about. You're trying to role-play someone else and walk in their shoes, literally walk in their shoes. That's what role-playing is. And it always surprises me how little some role players are empathetic towards other people. And so I see it all the time. People are very, very math-phobic. Like, people are always amazed to me, like, I can do math in my head, and I have to bite my tongue. Like, it's just so easy. You have to practice. That's all. But they're math, and they could practice. They could do it, but they're math-phobic, right? So that's why I have the dots, so that it's not a character sheet covered in numbers. In fact, there are no numbers in the character sheet. Well, two, your ranks.
Right. Because historically speaking, I believe that D&D, war games, and other like this hobby, this entertainment, was driven from math, from science guys who were looking to ways to entertain themselves with some math or other science.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And there's no problem with that. There's a room for that. That's wonderful. That's great. Have games like that. But I want my games. You know, I believe in the Ratatouille saying anyone can cook. Right? From Ratatouille. And I believe anyone can game, and we should make games so that people who want numbers can have numbers, but anyone can play a tabletop game. It's available to anyone, which is, by the way, why FangKnight has cards. So all the information you need about your powers, your arcanics, and even the rules are all on playing cards. And so, and of course, Daggerheart already has this and beat us.
Yeah,
to,
yeah.
But I came with the idea before they began writing, and I already had the cards. We just didn't publish in time, that's all. Because unlike Daggerheart, we've been playtesting this game for 5 years. So it's very, very well playtested.
I remember this card system back in your project in I Am Zombie, right? So which kind of shifted
absolutely.
ideas for me.
But this is a different, this system though is D20. With I Am Zombie, I tried too hard to be an innovative, different game. And this time I said, you know what? It'll just be a narrativist version of D20 because everyone understands how D20 works. I understand the limitations of D20 and was able to work around them in a beautiful way. But basically, you take an ability plus a skill, you add them together as your proficiency bonus, and you add it to a D20, and you try to beat a scene difficulty. So it's very, very simple. But the whole problem with D20 being very black and white and nothing happening when you fail, we took that out. Now when you fail, your opponent gets a free reaction. So no matter what happens, even when you fail your roll, something still happens. Your enemy gets a reaction, which can be a damage strike back by a minion, or it can be a free move, or you choose what you want. So now something always happens, and that has taken away a big weakness of the D20 system, that too often you make a roll and nothing happens, and you don't want that. In a role-playing game, you want something to always happen with a dice roll, and in this game, it does. Something always happens.
You told that you had a chance to playtest Daggerheart, if I get it correctly?
Yes, I did. I very much like the system. It's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful book, beautiful art. It's gorgeous. So many great ideas. It's basically powered by the apocalypse, done in a new way. It's absolutely pioneering, and it's also, I'm afraid, maybe it's broken. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's broken. I think that people will learn a lot about game design from it. They'll get a lot of ideas, but the math doesn't work out. They needed to play test more. I think people will maybe come up with modifications, and there'll be hacks that people will do to make it not broken. But I think the way it's written, it's broken. I say that with all due respect, because I know how hard it is to make a game system, and I think many game systems are broken and still playable. Right? It's not like it's unplayable, but it is broken.
Yeah.
Speaking about this change, this dichotomy between narrative-driven games and math crunchy games with a lot of character customization and mechanics. Where do you think your game, FangKnight, stands on this spectrum, or do you think maybe the game can have both?
I think it's a false spectrum. I think a lot of modern games try to be this narrativist game, like Morg Borg, right, where it tries to be narrativist and no setting, no depth. Right? No. And I'm like, no, you need to be narrativist and very simple at its core, but you need to have a very complex, beautiful setting, right? And you need to have a depth of rules, right? So that it can cover different situations. So you want to make it so it's very, very simple and approachable and easy to play. At the same time, you want to be able to have it so that there is enough setting and depth to the game, including rules, so that it creates it's a full experience. And it's not just like, okay, this is, we go into a Shadow Dark. Okay, it's a dungeon, a quest game like D&D with only 3 stats, and you don't have torch, and you only have torches, no see in the dark, which is a great concept. but it's not. It's enough to play like 6 times, you know. But your character, you can't play a long-lasting campaign. And for me, tabletop role playing, I want to make games where if you want to, you can play a campaign with a character that lasts 20 game sessions. And for me, that's the perfect amount, right? That's enough to really get into your character, you know, advance enough to become powerful in your community. And that to me is the ultimate tabletop experience. You know, 3 game sessions, 6 game sessions with the same character, for me at least, that's not enough, right? And I think a lot of the modern games are designed to be played at conventions, and they're not, you know, one shots, and they're not really designed for a full thing. But maybe I'm just old fashioned. Maybe that's not how people play anymore, but it's how I play.
I see. I see.
I love long-term campaigns.
Yes, so let's talk a little more about you. I will zoom out and ask you about your experience with Ukraine. So you've been multiple times, right, in Ukraine,
Yes,
and you even sat and took part in the LARP in Lviv, Game of
Yep.
Franks, right? And obviously, we have lots of folks, lots of people who like admire your talent and remind of this experience each time in our hobby, etc. So, at the current moment, do you have any connections to Ukraine, or events, or plans, or anything that maybe
Yeah,
even
I mean,
influenced or inspired you in your work?
you know, if and when the war ends, I have an invitation to maybe part of the rebuilding, so I may come after the war. But of course, that keeps being pushed off. But you never know. Putin might mysteriously die tomorrow. Who knows, right? And then the war.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. But yeah, actually, I have a shout out to Daria in Kiev. She's actually working on our FangKnight computer game, which is an MMO LARP. So it's basically an MMO that works more like a LARP than a purely adventure game. So you live in your Firehold, and you have up to a few hundred vampires living there. And basically, you have your different, as I said before, your bloodlines, your covens, your origins, and then your malice. It's a malice of fangs. Your malice is your little team, your group, your gang. And so you're divided by your different factions. No one knows who you're truly most loyal to. And you try to advance rank in your factions and then also take over the Firehold. You go onto these quests below the Firehold, the Abysma. A Firehold basically holds back the forces of hell. So there's a giant abysmic dungeon underneath you that goes all the way to hell. So it's called a Firehole because the smoke comes out of the maw. And so these are castles that have a huge plume of smoke coming out of them at all times. So, and then the different Fireholds compete with each other. So you can go from Firehold to Firehold. They can fight each other. They can be at war. We even have a board game that represents the world outside. So you're basically playing in the LARP, which is something we did in the playtest and leave. We basically had the board game there where you're trying to control different groups. And so we'll have that. It'll be that never-ending board game. Basically, different Fireholds and different factions can play different versions of the game, different levels, and try to take control of the world and get resources for their faction or for their Firehold. So, and it'll be it's a weird design because it's a board game that you have a turn when you have a quorum, when enough people are present to satisfy the turn. But really, it's a board game that never ends. It just keeps going on forever. But when you cash out your chips, you get to keep some. Your faction gets most of it, and you're basically cashing out. And then when you play, you jump back in again, or someone else in your faction just takes over your hand, and they keep playing, right? So it just is it's an interesting design, and it's just
Definitely.
it's just another kind of play loop, right? Like games are made up of play loops. Like chess, you know, it's a very interesting play loop, even though it's very simple. That, you know, you have you set up the board, you make your move, and then you have the tension, right? Of, uh-oh, did I make the right move? It's their move. I can't do anything. I'm stuck. I'm frozen. And then suddenly it's your move, and then you have a tension of, uh-oh, the clock's ticking. I got to quickly make my decision, right? And so there's that back and forth of helplessness and tension, and that's kind of the play loop of chess, right? So the play loops we'll have the classic MMO play loops of, you know, go fight the monster in the Abysma, collect their treasure for people who want to do that. Or we'll have the more of the board game stuff. And then mostly, I hope, we'll be able to pull off the intrigue and the LARP stuff where you're basically online, and this will be actual role-playing, where you'll be playing council meetings and, you know, crafting and trying to convince people to help you, and mutinies and taking over, and sort of the sort of the group role-playing, which I think an MMO, I always wanted MMOs to do, and I've always been disappointed playing MMOs.
Like in the old World of Warcraft role-playing servers?
Yeah,
used
like
to-
the old version, like we forced it to do role playing. Certain servers were more role playing, and there was some good stuff going on. In this game, we have a bunch of people who work in top secret field but quit recently. I can't imagine why you would want to quit your top secret job in America, but you can probably guess why. And we're all met playing World of Warcraft 20 years ago. So we played on a role-playing server, and we're taking those ideas and we're bringing them to life. And so anyway, Daria is one of our one of the employees. She works on the project. Right now she's designing, shout out to Daria, she's designing dungeon segments. So
Well,
And do you have any plans about LARP? Because the COVID and the war in Ukraine hit very strongly the LARP culture in Ukraine.
yeah, I bet it did.
Yep, and I personally with some folks try to renovate, recreate, revivify the culture of LARP. So do you have any thoughts?
I finally cracked the code. So what I did for the live actual LARP is I figured out that you create your character by choosing 4 tarot cards. One is for your bloodline, one is for your coven, and so it's basically a LARP. It's very quick to make a character, and then you meet with your faction, and then you trade who will be the highest status of our faction. You'll trade the cards among you. And so one of you will have the highest status number, but one of you will have the highest combat number. One of you have the highest intrigue number. And so you can trade the cards around, and then you play as a faction. But of course, everyone decides for themselves, I have 4 different factions. Which one am I most loyal to? Well, that is something only you know, and no one else knows. And so immediately then there's a tension, because when you talk to someone, you may know, oh, they're a member of my faction, but is this faction the most important faction to them? Are they telling the truth or are they lying? So, and then you also these little mini cards, like in Settlers of Catan, the little resource cards. And then those are used with the numbers on your tarot cards to determine if you win a challenge. And if you want to support a friend who's in a challenge, you can support them, and then you pair off with the person who's supporting them, and then you have a whole bunch of people doing challenges to support the main challenge. So it's a very fast system, no hammer, paper, scissors. It does require cards, but it's very fast, very elegant, and it makes the focus on the role-playing, which is important. And I will be playtesting this in Ukraine for sure, because it began in Ukraine, of course. So as soon as I'm able to, I will come. And
Awesome.
Cool. Whenever I enroll new players, new blood, so to say, into TTRPGs, the easiest way for them to understand what's going on the table and what's going on with the setting, with the game that we are going to play, is to give them some pop culture references. What do you think people should read, watch, or listen to get into FangKnight?
I mean,
or maybe Lost Lore, like to the broader scale.
I mean, the most obvious thing that comes up is Game of Thrones, right? Because like when I first sold this to the people, I said it's Game of Thrones with a bite, but Game of Thrones I think is a very high magic setting, but it's very gritty and very low down. It's realistic. So it has high magic, but the characters don't have high magic, right? Most of the characters can't do magic, but they're in a world of high magic, and I think that's a very key thing. And so in this world, obviously you're a vampire, you are, a superhero basically, right? You have higher magic than in Game of Thrones, but most people don't. And most people live lives where they don't have, like, it's much more gritty, and even the vampires have to have a more gritty, realistic. So I like that. So I think Game of Thrones, especially the books, is a great source. I think, I don't know. I love all the new vampire movies coming out. Nosferatu was awesome. Sinners was wow, loved it. I can't wait for the sequel to Sinners. I think that's gonna be the first. That'll be the first in the Sinners series to be a movie all about vampires. Like the ending of Sinners, when you saw them, I believe it was the 1970s or something. That was cool. So yeah, any kind of there really hasn't been a lot of vampire movies set in the Middle Ages. So and this is more Renaissance even. So we'll have to. I don't know.
Do you know Castlevania? The video game world, and they have like Netflix anime adaptations. It reminded me a bit.
Yeah. I mean,
but more gritty, of course.
Yeah, that the tone of that is very different from the tone of.
Yes, the tone is.
Yeah.
High
So.
fantasy.
Yeah. Tone is very important to me. I think it's the most important thing in storytelling, and it's the hardest to explain and the hardest to pull off. People all the time go, "We'll make recommendations," and I go, "Oh, sorry, it's not going to work." And they go, "Why?" And I'll just go, "Tone." And they're like, "What does that mean?" And I go, "I can't explain it. It's tone. Some things fit, some things don't."
And have you heard about the new upcoming game, The Blood of Dawnwalker?
De Niro's going to be what?
The new video game, The Blood of Dawnwalker.
Wow, he's doing voices in it, or?
It's also about vampires in medieval. It's from ex-developers of Witcher.
I did not hear about that. I'm looking it up right now.
Yeah, and when I looked at this game, it very strongly reminded me of your game, actually. So maybe take a look.
Okay. Open world vampire game. Oh no!
Competitors.
Wow. No, I think there's going to be plenty of room for.
Yeah, there's a lot of Ukrainians working in the studio, so
Oh,
about this
really?
game, so
Okay.
you should really check it out when you have. Okay, and speaking more about the spells, the spellcraft, the magic in your game, what can you tell us shortly about the magic at all, and maybe explain the Dreamers and the laws of time?
Yeah, there's the 7 Dwemer, which is kind of like our basic 7 types of uncanny. We have a rule, by the way, we never use the M word, the MAGIC word. We never use that, so we say uncanny. For that is, I think when you use the M word, it's the wrong tone instantly. People either think magician or they think kid stuff, and it's just
Harry Potter, like, right?
it's a word you cannot use anymore. It ruins the imagination, especially when normies hear it, right? Like I think, and then, but even gamers, they think of the card game, right? So the word has been kind of ruined, so we never ever use that word. And the idea is then that the Dwemer are the 7 flavors of basically the uncanny, and there are 3 which are on the dark side, 3 which are on the more hopeful bright side, and then there's one in the middle called a nulla, which is kind of like the thing that holds the rest of them together. And there's 3 pairs of opposites, right? And so you have profana and you have natura. So the natura is sort of nature, and profana is the profane, right? You have withera and fera. Withera is the destruction of things, the withering away, and fera is like imagination and hope and possibility. Withera and natura are the 2 opposites, so destruction and creation. Profana and sakra. Sakra being, in this world, the sun is the creator god, Elon. Elon created Lostlorn as a jail for Skarl. Skarl is a demon from another dimension who basically is the devil, and all of Lostlorn was designed as a jail for him. And he called all the lost souls from Earth to come here as purgatory because he wanted to have minions to manipulate. So mortals are all here, an eternal cycle of life. And Lostlorn, by the way, when you die, you're reborn again and again and again. You don't necessarily remember your past life, but sometimes you do. And the idea is that after each thing, eventually you can become powerful enough to climb the world tree, which is Mother Nature. It's called Grandmother Nama, the world tree, and you can climb her up to the top where there are cities on the top branches, and then from there you can go to the star courts, which are the basically the stars, are these giant rocks, and there you can become a god. And once you become a nova, it is said nova after long enough of being gods can escape Lostlorn. So the idea is to go on the Nova quest.
There is a way out. Okay.
There's a way out. They say there is. It is said there's a way out. We'll see.
If you level up your humanity.
It's kind of
enough.
remind me of the world of the cult Divinity Lost system.
Yeah. Okay.
If you heard of it.
Yeah, I have heard of it. Yeah.
Because of this, like the world is like decepted gods, and mortality is the prison for their life. So the other gods can like live on their energy. So it's pretty much. Sounds like the world you described for me.
So each of these Dwemer basically represents one of the creator, one of the 7 sort of manifested gods of the world. So Sakra is Elam, Natura is Nama, and the Withera is Lostlorn is surrounded by a giant storm called the Tempest, which is a force of nature, and all of the motes who have failed and become sharded and been broken up, and those shards become monsters. And then once the monsters become broken up, the shards, they becomes mote dust. And that mote dust is added to the Tempest. It's this giant hurricane that circles Lostlorn, and it's getting more and more powerful. And so as more and more souls come here and get broken up and fail and aren't reborn anymore, it adds to the Tempest, and the Tempest becomes stronger and stronger. So all the shorelands of Lostlorn used to be these big empires and kingdoms, and now they're these ruined places hit by the blight mists and the Tempest storms. And so there are kind of these vast ruins. It's called the Blightlands. So, but it's a giant continent with all these fjords and inland areas. It's not like everything is destroyed. It's just these areas on the outside. And so, and that's Sturma, of course. Then Profana is Skarl, who's locked in the prison in hell. And then Farah has basically the Trolland, where the Tro live, where it's a world of imagination and wonder, but also of horror. People will go there, and their bodies will be left sleeping, and they starve to death. If others didn't tend to them, they would just starve to death. They wouldn't even realize.
I'm sure there is some faction of vampires who want to free Skarl from the prison, right?
Yes, those are called the Shadowbane, and they're the enemies of the Amarantha, the Order of Amarantha, which the Fireholds represent. And so the Shadowbane once used to rule over humans, and their goal is to free Skarl. And their leader is the first vampire called the Daughter of Skarl. and she's one of the first demon servants Skarl created from his own blood. And so the first vampire is literally as a vampire, you are essentially a child of Skarl. You have some Skarl's blood in you. Yeah. Yeah. So I love mythology, and I love making sense of things and having everything tie together. And I think this world, and it's 7 games, by the way. This is only the first of the 7 games. So just like World of Darkness, the games will come out, and we're planning on doing computer games for all of them, and tabletop games, and LARP games, and all the games will use essentially the same basic character sheet. And
This is awesome.
So that way you can actually play your character online, at the tabletop, and at a LARP all in the same day.
That's pretty cool.
Which for me, I think would be, they of course have different rules, but essentially it's the same character with the same, core character sheet, which is, the character sheet from the tabletop. And for me, I think that is very exciting, because I like the idea of, we're going to have a mode where literally you can go into your council, your Malice quarters. Your Malice has its own living quarters or little room, and it'll have a table. And as your characters, you can have minis on the table and dice, virtual dice, and you can actually inside the computer game play the tabletop game.
So it's rather a virtual tabletop inside of MMORPG.
Exactly right.
Cool.
By the way, the language in the system is so eloquent, I would say. Yeah, that inspires the choice of words and lexicon in describing and creating the feel and tone of your system.
Thank you. I'm really into words, as anyone who has played Vampire knows.
As Alex mentioned, the language in which the FangKnight is written is very rich, very eloquent, and with many unusual, so to say, terms. As you mentioned, you avoid the M word, right? And obviously English is not our primary language, and we noticed that. And personally, I looked at the dictionary occasionally when reading FangKnight. So was that deliberate to use unusual terminology?
Yeah, absolutely.
And what was the goal behind that?
I mean, if you've ever read Harry Potter, you know that her use of Old English is unparalleled, right? It goes to Old English all the time for these great words that have a resonance and depth, especially for people who English is their native language, right? Because Old English, like English has a lot of borrowed words from French, and thus they're Latin words, right? But English also has this Old English type words, which are more Norse in origin and more Anglo-Saxon. And so those words, I think, have a natural, because they're used in more common things, they just feel more magic. Oh, I almost used the word. They feel more arcane. And so using them just gives a feel to it. And I'm very proud of some of the words. Like uncanny is the perfect word. Dwemer is the perfect word. And they're just very good Old English words, and I think people will become very familiar with these words, and they'll learn to love them. And they're not that hard to say, at least for native English speakers. And and of course, gamers from all over the world have played Vampire, and they've all gotten used to the weird words I use for Vampire. So I think it's okay for people for whom English is a second language. They will adapt, or they will just make up local words that have a similar ring.
But the translators will suffer as hell.
Yes, they will.
That's a game about purgatory, so that's appropriate.
FangKnight is already being translated. I've already made a deal for it to be translated into Portuguese. So I'm going to a convention in Rio in 3 days, and we're announcing the translation there, and the translators are already complaining. So,
of course.
But my experience from Vampire is that if the translators are not complaining, I didn't do my job. So I must make the translators complain, and then I know I've done a good job.
Yeah, similar mindset towards the language to use in your rulebook reminds me of Blades in the Dark, the system of genius John Harper.
It's a great game. I love that game. I don't think it has enough setting. It needs more setting, but the game rules are great.
Yeah, and we currently in Ukraine, it is being translated into Ukrainian.
Really?
But but it's professionally, and it's so hard to make it work.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, you almost have to make up new words. But I always tell the translators, like, as hard as it is for you, imagine how hard it was for me. I agonize over these words. I have lists of thousands of words, which I have literally thousands of pages of me playing with words and various combinations of words, and coming up with things. And then often I have to get rid of a lot of words, because I have a rule that I only can have so many invented words in the game. Otherwise, there's too many invented words, and I have to go back, and sometimes my favorite words I have to get rid of because we already have too many of these invented words. And I definitely put more time into it than the translators do, trying to figure it out. But it's the most important thing. because words are defining your world for you, right? And words are, I won't say the N word, but in linguistically speaking, they have a deeply arcane set of connections in the human mind, right? They are living entities, right? Meme theory, words are alive inside of our minds, and so they have power.
Yeah, each flavor, each emotion, and by using the language so thorough, we make our contribution to the language as evolution of language.
Yes, I'm very proud of having done that. So,
Right.
like I love how in TV tropes, the one of the most popular tropes, most looked up, is called the Masquerade, and that's when the beings in the storyline are in hiding among the mortals, and it's the name giver to that trope is called Vampire the Masquerade. So I feel like okay, I've done something, and
There's
that
the
is
contribution.
like in Hollywood, people when they have this idea, they go, oh yeah, the Masquerade trope, and so it's kind of funny to me that my friends in Hollywood will write me and go, hey, they used the Masquerade trope today. They mentioned it in the staff meeting. I'm like,
Good to know.
Awesome.
So many people see tabletop RPGs as a form of therapy or kind of way of self-discovery. Has that impacted your work or shaped it in any way?
absolutely. I think art is one of the best ways to self-help, right? If people come to me and they're very upset or whatever, I'm like, go make art. First of all, exercise, but secondly, go make art. If you're really depressed and you're really unhappy, first of all, go for a walk and then come back and then do something artistic. It is the most cleansing thing, and I think role playing it's art and it lets you get outside of yourself, right? And I think a lot of people who are having trouble, whether it's depression or anything else, getting out of your own little box and exploring another life is very, very useful. And I've always loved how role playing has been very accepting. From the very beginning, I think role playing allowed any weirdo to join the table. Like at least my experience of role playing has been the most unsocial, unable to make eye contact people on the spectrum, to the most, crazy artsy people, to the most, math, don't want to do any role playing at all. Everyone was accepted, everyone was allowed, and we found a way to make it work. And so I think role playing is a beautiful thing for people, and it should be used as such, and it should be understood as such.
I'm interested in how would you describe how does horror manifest in FangKnight, like personal, existential, social, and it'd be cool to compare with other similar systems, like maybe with VTM.
I mean, there's definitely an element of personal horror, which I love. The idea of you becoming a monster. In FangKnight, we call it a fiend I am, lest a fiend I become. And it literally is you have hunger that takes over you. You also have the fiend. So unlike in Vampire the Masquerade, the hunger would take over. But in this case, if you see cruelty, your need for cruelty can come out. Your need for dominance and control. And so you could be talking to mortals, and then suddenly they can see behind your eyes. The fiend comes out, where you just want to master them and control them, have them bow to you, and that can come out. And that's sort of the personal horror. There's also body horror, where you go through these horrifying changes. Some bloodlines, morph their body, or there's blood horror. There's your parts get misshapen. When you the nameless are the servants of the zombies, of the vampires, and nameless are zombies. And when you go to 0 hit points, you become a zombie. You go into somnol, where you're basically a zombie. So you're just walking around mindless, and they have to get you home somehow. But you can kind of walk, but also you're going to do horrible things. Like your body is going to just feed on flesh and all that kind of shit. So it's this horrifying thing. Like in FangKnight, when you die, it's not like they're carrying your body. It's like it's worse. You're a zombie. And and I think that's pretty horrifying. And then of course there's the horror of you're basically cattle. As FangKnights, you're cattle being raised in the Firehold so that the Fang Lords and the Venerate can feed on you, and that's pretty horrifying. So I think all these things are meant to be realizations that you only realize as you go into the game, and then it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. And there's a great moment behind the playtest where the Venerate says, "One of you I must feed on you now," and they had to decide between the 5 of them which of them would die and be fed to the Venerate.
Cool. So about the first point, like for me, the twist of the death in this horror context, it's like in FangKnight, death of a vampire is not like physical death, but like destruction of will. You are still the vampire, but without free will, right?
Yes, yeah. Which for me is the most terrifying thing of all.
Right.
Like I grew up in the age where dementia and Alzheimer's is getting more and more and more in Western world, and that's the one thing I don't want. That I don't want to live like that. I already told my children, just don't. If I get to that point, say goodbye. Find a way.
Okay.
Yeah, it's truly
And,
horrifying.
Yeah, and well, last question for today. So obviously your career in TTRPGs spans over decades. So how has your approach to game design evolved over time, and what new perspective have you gained that form your current projects?
My mentor was Greg Stafford, who designed RuneQuest, and he was sort of the mastermind behind Chaosium and the whole Call of Cthulhu thing, and he always advised me. And when he was the age I am now, he did Pendragon, which was, I believe, at that time, was the highest form of art of any role-playing game. And it was a culmination of all his years of design work, and it was perfect. It was beautiful and simple and elegant, and you could just see his whole life in that game. And anyone who plays role-playing games, that has always been like one of those games that is just so beautiful. And I wanted to create something like that, which is beautiful and elegant, but yet at the same time, very, very playable, very modern, very attuned to what gamers want today, and yet still just a perfect, elegant game. And you guys can see from reading FangKnight, you know, each rule has its own page. Every page is its own chapter. It's very, very tuned down, very simple for the modern reader to read, but yet as these pages pile up, and there's 288 pages, right, that you get a full world, a complete world. And once all the games come out, that World of Lost Zone will be very complete. And it will be a complete, elegant game and beautiful. And I think I could have only made this game today and now from a lifetime of working in the field, you know? And this is my ultimate creation.
When is the Kickstarter coming live?
We hope soon. We're basically doing the game is done. We just did the final changes, so now we're basically getting ready for the Kickstarter. So, you know, of course we'll continue changing the text, but basically we did the final play testing and it's done, finally. And it's a very playable game. I have to say that you will always see a giant difference between games that are play tested a lot by the creators and those that are not. And this has been blind play tested by people just given the game, and they give us their feedback, and also we play test ourselves. So I think it's really good. I hope. I know. So anyway,
we'll for sure advertise that.
Hopefully in August or September, as soon as August or September.
Great to hear that.
Well, yeah, that is amazing, Mark. Thank you very much for this great conversation. Maybe you have a few words for your big fans in Ukraine that will be watching this interview and waiting for you. Yeah. So.
I cannot wait for the war to be over. I will be there within a short time. I want to be there for the party. And Slavo Ukraini.